Yo, what's up guys? It's the new sensation, Big O Notation here, and today we have the next round of my journey through the Rising Phoenix Odyssey Dragon Ball YouTuber tournament. So during this round, this is the second round, I was paired up against a member from the Attack on Productions YouTube channel, and as always, big shout out to them. They were a really good opponent, really good fun just chatting to them, and they played really well. So as always, I'm going to have a link to their channel down in the description, along with the Rising Phoenix Odyssey YouTube channel. As with every video that I'll probably do of this tournament, big shout out to him for hosting the tournament and for always supporting me on my videos, always commenting nice stuff. I really appreciate it. So I'll have a link to both of those channels down in the description. But as you can see from the screen at the moment, the matchup is I decided to bring my Xeno deck. I was planning to bring it a little bit later, but because my opponent requested to play on untap, it was the only deck that I had built at the time that was properly tested, so I decided I would bring the Xeno deck for this matchup instead. And my opponent brought with him OG Broly, which is really bad for me. That's probably one of the worst matchups that Xeno can have, because as with most slower mill decks, Xeno is a deck that really struggles with hand control, but even more so than a lot of other mill decks like Janemba and like the Android 21 mill stuff. Even more than that, because Xeno is a deck that doesn't really inherently draw a lot on its own, but all of the cards replace themselves, so you kind of maintain a steady hand size, but you never go very plus. And so because of that, your hand size is generally going to hover around the 8 card kind of region, rather than propelling itself into like the 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 card hands that you might see with some other decks in this game. And that's kind of a theme that a lot of the set 14 decks have at the moment, is that a lot of the cards in the set 14 decks replace themselves, but they don't inherently plus, which I think is a problem with the set itself that it might have in the future. But we'll see how Spirit Boost develops, and I definitely have high hopes for Spirit Boost in general, but specifically for Xeno, because we know it's getting more support in the next few sets. So as always, I would definitely recommend picking it up. And if you're interested in my deck profile of my Xeno list, I'll have a link to that in the description as well. But unlike the other the first round that I did, that I commentated on earlier this week, I'm going to be trying to do the entire best of 3 match in one video here, so it might be a bit of a longer video, so I apologize for that, but I think that it would just be easier to digest for you guys watching the video to just have the entire best of 3 match in one video rather than breaking it up into 2 or 3 separate videos, just so that it's easier for you guys to watch and see at one time rather than having to wait for 3 separate videos. So I'm just going to start playing it now. I've sped it up as with the first round. I'm just going to be speeding it up so that it goes a bit quicker for you guys. I was really hoping to win the dice roll in this, and luckily I think I did there. We rolled the same number on the dice, I think twice in a row there. So I was a little bit worried because I rolled the 17 and I was all excited, and then realized that I wasn't going to get to start. But then I managed to win in the end, which was nice. Going first in this matchup is really nice just because you get to set up your unison generally before they can set up their field card. And it just, I mean, with any control deck, I feel like going first in control matchups or playing a control deck is a lot more important than those playing aggro decks at the current state of the game, just because of really specific cards like the Majin Buu AOD unison and stuff like that. Getting certain cards down one turn earlier in control decks is really impactful. So here I'm just setting up my unison. I decided to bottom deck a super combo because my hand is looking really nice at the moment. I think that I could potentially have bottom decked the extra card from my hand, but I was thinking I could probably use it to search out my Ultimate Dragon Tackle by the time he gets his unison down, or I could search out my Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet if he has enough cards in the drop. But OG Broly doesn't really go through that many cards, so they probably won't have that many in the drop, and I'm not going to be playing extra cards during the early game. I end up discarding the extra card in the end, and he discards a Cell's extra card, the Earth Destroying Kamehameha, which is great for me because, as you can see, he hasn't seen his field card yet. So that's a really good thing to see from my perspective, because the OG Broly deck really relies on seeing its field card turn 1. If you don't see it early enough, then the entire deck just kind of crumbles apart. The reason that I'm discarding the extra cards off of his discard effects is because the battle cards in this deck are going to replace themselves, hopefully, with their checking the top card every time they're either played or discarded from a Shadow Dragon effect. So because they're effectively going to be free in terms of hand advantage, because they're going to replace themselves, I want to be keeping them in my hand over the extra cards, because the extra cards are, some of them might replace themselves, but not as, without, it won't give me the same tempo as the battle cards will. And so that's my reasoning behind keeping the battle cards over the extra cards. I think generally in hand control matchups you want to be keeping battle cards in your hand when your opponent goes to discard stuff. So here I'm just dropping my 1-drop haze and bringing out the 3-drop haze to warp down his super combo, and then using my leader skill to discard a Naturon Shenron, and then checking the top card. I think here I accidentally drew one too many cards, and so he was just saying he trusted me to show the right card, and obviously because I'm recording, you guys could see it was the last card that I drew, which was the Oceana super combo that would have been revealed off of the Naturon search. My game plan for this game is, because he hasn't seen his field card yet, I do not want to be taking him below 4 life for as long as possible, because once he reaches below 4 life, he's going to be able to awaken, and that will give him 2 more cards in his hand, which will potentially give him an easier chance at seeing that field card. But it'll also mean that he'll be able to start clearing cards off of my board with his awakened leader auto. So I need to watch out for that, and that's the reason why I take quite a passive approach to this game. And so here he just taps 2 to set up his Unison. He still hasn't seen his field card, which is amazing for me. And my game plan for this, like I said, I don't want to take him below 4 life for as long as I can. And if I take him below 4 life, I want to be either pressuring him enough so that he doesn't have very much that he can do with his hand, or I want to be trying to kill him that turn. So I need to set up quite a big board before I do that. And to go along with that game plan, if I do swing to his leader, I want to make sure most of those attacks are crit swings from my 3-drop haze Shenron, because that will stop him gaining any sort of hand advantage, and it will mean that I will always have the upper hand in this matchup, no pun intended, because his leader is going to be forcing him to discard cards from his hand as well as me, so he's not going to actually gain any advantage from that. Whereas I'm going to be able to gain advantage from playing down my battle cards and swinging with my leader and plussing 1. So it's going to be very important that I keep him at a low hand size, which is going to be very ironic considering he's the hand control deck. Here I just ultimate whirlwind spin. I decide to grab a super combo just because none of the other options are all that important for me, and I already have copies of the Oceanus and the 2 hazes in my hand, which are going to be the main battle cards I need for this game. And I actually mill his field card searcher, the 8-drop Broly, which is a huge hit for me, because that means that he would have drawn that next turn and been able to set up his field card and help himself awaken, because it can optionally take 2 life when he plays the field card. So here I swing with my leader and discard the Promo Sin Shenron, and that actually searches me the secret rare, which I flip off the top, which is amazing, and that also puts me at 8 cards, or 8 cards in the drop area, 7 of which are black Shadow Dragons, which means that I can awaken, and because I'm swinging down his Unison here, that awaken will take me to 15k, which puts him to 2 markers, and then I can swing with my haze, and that puts him to 1 marker, and that's really important because that means that if he has Frieza Charismatic Villain in his hand, he's not going to be able to counterplay my 3-drop haze. So you'll notice I didn't play a battle card that turn until I'd taken his Unison down to 1 marker, and my reasoning for that was to play around the Frieza Charismatic Villain, so that if he had it in his 3-card hand, he wouldn't be able to use it. So here he Shocking Death Balls my final attack on his Unison to kill my 1-drop haze, and then I just replay another 1-drop haze because I've managed to draw into 3 copies of this game so far, and just use that to check the top card. I don't think I hit anything with that checking the top card ability, so that's a bit of a shame for me. but I don't have any targets in my hand to bring out from the 1-drop haze, so I decide not to use the effect. But I might as well play it because it's efficient in terms of using my energy every turn, and hopefully it would give me a card, but I don't think it did in that case. But also I'm going to be able to protect it because it's not in rest mode, so it can't be easily attacked, and he's only got 2 cards in hand, so if he's using removal on my 1-drop haze, I'm really okay with that because my 3-drop hazes are going to be able to survive then. But also, if he's able to self-awaken this turn, it means that I can then choose to sack off my 1-drop haze for his backside leader auto, because when he swings, when he's awakened, I'll be forced to pitch one of my battle cards and a card from my hand every turn, but I get to choose which cards I get rid of. So that's part of the reason why I played that 1-drop haze there. Just for in terms of energy efficiency and in terms of playing around his potential self-awaken turn, if he had drawn like the field card or something. But by the looks of things, he hasn't seen the field card still, which is amazing. So he's using his super combo to make me pitch cards, and then his Bardock Unison to further pitch more cards. That's absolutely fine by me because he's got 2 cards in hand. He can't really do anything without that field card, and I'm just gaining so much ridiculous advantage here. Here I misplay slightly, and I swing with my leader before I use my 1-drop hazes effect. I should have used my 1-drop haze effect first and played down the Naturon Shenron, but he drops Dormant and kills my 1-drop and stops me from swinging for the rest of the turn. Luckily I have a second or a third copy at this point, I think it is, a third 1-drop haze in my hand, so I just drop that down and then use the effect to play another 3-drop haze, and this is going perfectly to plan. Like I said earlier, I just want to swarm the board with critical swingers and keep him at 5 life until I think that I can kill him. And in terms of trying to protect his Unison, he's ended up using his entire hand to try and protect his Unison, and I've still managed to get through it. So I'm in a really, really good spot here. He's completely reliant on top decks, and I have board control, hand control, and life control completely at my disposal. You'll notice that turn I didn't end up charging. That was just because I didn't think I needed to charge that turn. I valued the cards in my hand over the cards in my energy because I already have the board control and he doesn't have any cards in his hand now. But also I just didn't have a good charge target in my hand, and I figured it was okay to skip the charge because I was already in such a massively winning position. I just wanted to push my advantage rather than trying to charge and play for the late game when there isn't going to be a late game this game. So here I'm just continuing with my game plan of trying to kill him on the turn that he's able to awaken. So I just swing with my 3 critical swingers, take him down to 2 life. Now he has the option to awaken, which is fair enough, like it's gonna happen eventually, but it also means that I can now play my double striker with the 1-drop haze effect, and that's gonna let me take him from 2 life to 0 life during this one swing. And he's going to have to out-combo 3 super combos, which I have in my hand. So he's not going to be able to do that very easily, especially with only 3 cards in hand after he awakens. So I just safely triple super combo into the swing for a 50k double striker, and I don't think he's able to combo out of it. He awakens and then combos up to, looks like 35k, and that's going to be the first game. So luckily for me, I managed to pull out the first game. That was genuinely only because he didn't see the field card, and for the rest of the match I'm kind of hoping that the same thing happens so that I can sneak another win in and get the entire match victory, because I know that this matchup is completely awful for me. Like, it's really, really impossible if his deck starts to play its game plan properly. So as soon as he sees the field card, it's going to become really, really tricky for me to win the game. And here, he's just sorting out his side deck. I think I'll skip along a little bit here. Yep, so that's past the mulligan phase, but he was checking through his side deck to see if there was anything he could side in. I was an idiot and forgot to prep a side deck for this match again. For some of my future games, I'm going to be bringing some side decks because I've learnt my lesson from this best of 3 match, and definitely bringing a side deck to these games is going to be a lot more helpful in the future. But I definitely should have prepared a side deck, and that's just my fault, because cards like the new Deborah Ritual at Hand that helps against hand control would have been really, really good in this matchup, obviously. And they're definitely cards that you want to consider side decking if you're planning to play Shenron, because hand control is really, really prevalent at the moment during this meta game, and it's a really, really tough matchup for this deck. So you definitely want to consider siding the Deborah Ritual at Hand and any sort of anti-control or anti-hand control cards. So this game I've opened kind of mediocre. I haven't seen my Unison, which is really, really bad for this deck. Obviously, being a Spirit Boost deck, you want to be opening your Unison every single game, because you want to guarantee that you're able to get it out as early as possible and start getting those markers up. Luckily for me, I have seen the 1-drop haze and the 3-drop haze, which isn't too bad for me. It's going to mean that I can hopefully control his board out pretty easily. Here you see I tried to play the ultimate Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet and then immediately realized he had 0 cards in drop, so it wasn't going to do anything. I maybe should have considered dropping the 1-drop haze on turn 1, but I genuinely just didn't really think about it, and I just passed because I didn't have my Unison. I think that potentially dropping the 1-drop haze could have been a good play, but I was thinking he might have had a way to self-awaken if he'd had like Paragus in hand as well as his 8-drop Broly like that. Then he could have cleared out the 1-drop. But yeah, in hindsight, I think that I should have dropped the 1-drop haze Shenron during my turn 1, so that I have the extra energy open to me on turn 2. Because turn 2 I'm planning to play the 1-drop and then go into the 3-drop haze. But here he's looking pretty set up. He's got his field card down, and he's got his Unison. So things you immediately want to consider, especially playing against any sort of green deck, is when they've got their Unison down, they're going to have Dormant live and they're going to have Frieza Charismatic Villain live. And he's gone up to 4 markers on his Unison, so that's made it really tricky for me to actually kill the Unison, which is what I kind of need to do to be able to stabilize this game. So as soon as they've got their Unison down, you want to be considering, can I play around Dormant, can I play around Frieza? And if the answer is no to either of those, then just remember, if you can't play around something, it's not worth trying to play around it, because if it's not worth trying to play around it, you're just going to end up losing card advantage just to play around a card that they might have. And if you're gonna be in a bad spot, whether they have the card or not, it's not worth playing around it, because you might as well take the risk and hope that they don't have it. And that's kind of what I'm thinking at this point. I'm digging through my deck to try and find some cards to help me deal with his Unison without forcing me to bring out battle cards, because I know that none of my battle cards have barrier, so they're all going to get hit by Frieza Charismatic Villain. And I need to try and find a way to play around the Frieza without playing these unprotected battle cards. And so I dig through my deck with my leader ability a little bit, and I end up not finding anything. I was hoping to see the ultimate Dragon Tackle to maybe try and force some markers off his Unison once he started building a board, but I ended up not seeing it, and so I decide this turn I cannot play around Frieza Charismatic Villain, and so I just have to risk it with my 3-drop haze play. And so I end up dropping it, and he of course has the Frieza Charismatic Villain. I still get the auto to grab another super combo, which is really nice, and I still have my 1-drop on board, which is very unprotected, being that it's sat in rest mode against 3 potential attackers. But it's still a card to have out, and it gave me some hand advantage because it gave me a card, or I think it gave me a card when I played it. It might have been the one that hit the Toa Unison, I can't remember. But if I can have my 1-drop haze Shenron survive until next turn, then I can potentially bring out some of my 3-drops. I have my Naturon in hand, I have my Sin Double Striker in hand. So my main game plan for this turn is to try and protect my 1-drop. He takes 2 cards out of my hand with his Super Combo and Bardock combo. And then I believe he swings Frieza into my 1-drop here, and I just have to let it go. I don't think it's worth comboing out of that attack, because he's got the Bardock Unison down, so he's going to be able to kill off some of my combo power. And he's also got 2 more swingers with his Leader Swing and his Bardock Unison. So it's not worth comboing out from the 1-drops to try and protect the 1-drop from his freezer, so I just let it die. And then he swings twice into my leader, which puts me to 4 life, and that will let me awaken next turn, which is really nice. Something to consider here is he's only got a 3-card hand, because he's not been able to awaken yet. He's still stuck on 5 life, and so what I'm thinking at this point in time is he's already played 1 Freezer Charismatic Villain. He's only got 3 cards left in hand. If I can get another 1-drop Haze down and get it to stick, and then start bringing out some of my 3-drops from hand, I'm actually going to be in a really good spot, because he's likely not got another Freezer Charismatic Villain in hand, just because he's got 3 cards in hand and he's already used 1. Here I bottom deck the Haze with my Toa Unison, and then I end up drawing it again from my Awaken, which is very funny. And so I'm thinking hopefully I can somehow find a 1-drop Haze here, but I don't manage to see it this turn, which is a really big shame. It would have been really helpful to see it this turn. So I can take out his Freezer with my Unison because it's 10k on 10k. He's not going to want to combo out. And I just swing my leader to his Unison to try and control the markers on it. And then I tap 3 for my Haze Shenron to see if I can get that to stick, and he ends up having the Freezer Charismatic, the 2nd copy, which is really unlucky for me. I didn't think that he would have it with only a 3-card hand, considering his draw power this game has been really quite low. And he's already seen 1 copy. I thought it was very unlikely for him to have a 2nd, but he managed to draw it, so that's just a little bit unlucky for me. And now I'm tapped out, so I'm going to be taking a fair bit of damage this turn. I do have Spirit Boost available to me, and I am able to protect my Unison with my leader's blocker skill, and I do also have a Power Burst in hand, which I can use to sparking off a life. So I have some decent ways to protect myself this turn, but I'm still pretty far behind just because of those Freezer Charismatics really hurting the deck and stopping me from being able to proactively play anything. Here he swings down my Unison with the Freezer, and I let that one go to play around, I think it was to play around some sort of double strike, I can't remember exactly why. And then he swings down with his leader on my Unison, and I'm going to use my leader to block that. And that will give my Unison an extra marker. Here he taps 3 for his Broly, and here all I'm hoping is that I can keep my Power Burst in hand, and sadly it is the first card he hits off, and then he also hits off my Haze Shenron, which was my way to remove his 6-drop Broly. So I got like the most unlucky that I could have been with those 2 hits. He definitely hit the 2 best cards out of my hand. I would have preferred him to hit the secret rare out of my hand than both of those, I think. And so he just swings down my Unison 35k or 30k double strike, and that's obviously going to kill it. And now I'm thinking I'm in a really bad spot. I've got nothing to play in hand. I just tap 1 for my Ultimate Whirlwind Spin to try and find some battle cards. And I see my 1-drop Haze, and obviously I'm going to take it because it's my only way of playing proactively in this deck. But I'm in a really bad spot here. I've got nothing proactive to do in my hand. And not only that, but he's got board control and he's got his Unison that I need to worry about. So if he has, say, his 3rd Freezer Charismatic in hand, that's going to be really troubling for me. And frustratingly enough, I don't see anything off of playing my 1-drop Haze, and I also draw a 2nd 1-drop Haze off of my leader swing. So I wasn't able to see anything that was helpful that turn, and I just decide the best play is probably for me to pass turn and try and rely on my secret rare to try and sneak this game out. But the thing I have to play around is I have to try and bait out his Bardock Unison's auto before I can combo with the Sin secret rare, because if I combo with the Sin secret rare and his Bardock triggers, then it's just going to kill my secret rare before I can even play it, so I got to be careful of that. But I'm thinking if I can use one of my super combos to bait out the Bardock ability, that's going to be really helpful, and he'll probably just trigger his Bardock effect when he sees a super combo come down, because any player would probably do that. So I super combo, I see another 1-drop Haze, which is kind of unhelpful. I want to be seeing my 3-drops really, because my 1-drop on board is sticking around still, and he's probably not got much removal for it. So I want to be seeing my 3-drops if possible. So here he swings with his Broly, and I combo super combo, he Bardocks it, and then I super combo and drop the Sin secret rare. And then I tap my last energy to bring it in and tap down his Unison and his Freezer. Now here I have a lot of thinking to do, because I could try and go for game on his leader, but that's going to put him at a lot of cards in hand, and I have to tap 4 for my Sin Shenron ability to, for my secret rares effect, to give it double strike dual attack for the turn. And it's also going to leave me pretty vulnerable if I can't kill him that turn. So I just decide I want to take apart his board if possible. I end up swinging, I think I'm swinging my leader to his, either his Unison or his Freezer here. It looks like, I think it went to his Unison. I think my idea was to try and see if I could get through his Unison this turn with potentially the amount of swings that I have available to me. And I'm just tapping 1 for my Toa, because I know that my Toa can take out his Freezer pretty easily. I'm thinking my Sin secret rare can probably take out his 6-drop Broly, and that will clear his board out. I'll only have to worry about his Unison then, and I have an Oceanus in hand to protect myself next turn. So here I'm just using the Unison +1. I didn't quite catch what I drew off of that, but I ended up just putting it straight back because it wasn't very helpful. And I tap 1 for my negative energy explosion to try and see an extra card. The ultimate dragon tackle is going to be the main one that I'm looking for here, and I managed to see it, which is great. And then I can use the spirit boost effect on my leader to play it and hopefully try and warp out one of his battle cards, and then draw a card if he gives me that option. But even if he gives me the option to just remove 2 markers from his Unison, that is absolutely fine by me as well, because that will make it easier for me to kill come my next turn. I'll be able to take out his Unison pretty easily, and then I won't have to play around Freezer Charismatic Villain anymore. So here he's just deciding whether he wants to take 2 markers off his Unison or let me draw a card and warp one of his battle cards, and he ends up just letting me take 2 markers off his Unison. And here I swing my secret rare into his 6-drop Broly, and he shocking death balls it. I think that this was potentially a slight mistake from me. I think that I could have maybe left my secret rare active and just tried to block his 6-drop Broly swing. But what I was worried about was him being able to self-awaken, and he would have been able to awaken himself anyway if he'd used the shocking death ball on my Toa swing. If I hadn't swung with the secret rare, that is. So he would have been able to self-awaken and just take out my blocker anyway. So swinging with the secret rare was, I think, the correct play there, because it was going to get removed during his turn either way, and I just wanted to try and take out one of the cards on his board. So sadly enough for me, he had the shocking death ball to self-awaken himself and stop me swinging into his Broly, and he also had the Cell's extra card, the Earth Destroying Kamehameha, to take the Oceanus out of my hand before I'm able to get another card from life to hand, and use its effect to try and stop him killing me next turn. And he's also able to protect his board by doing that as well. So he taps 1 for Paragus to take a card out my hand with the Bardock effect, and then he swings with leader to take the last card out my hand, and then that puts me on 1 life with 1 card in hand, and because of the Bardock Unison I can't combo with it because it will just get sacked off immediately, and that's going to be game to him. So there you can kind of see that this is really a bad matchup. Like, those 2 Freezer Charismatic Villains that he had were able to completely turn the game around, because I wasn't able to put any of my cards onto the board, and he was just able to pop off my board as soon as I established it, whilst whittling away my hand. And even though he had a really low hand size throughout that entire game, it's only because he wasn't able to awaken early enough, and as soon as he's able to awaken, he's able to draw quite a few cards. So I have to be careful of him being able to awaken his leader. So this game, because I lost, I'm able to go first, and that's obviously a massive advantage to me, because on my turn 2 I want to be dropping my 1-drop Haze and going into a 3-drop Haze, and on his turn 2 is when he plays his Unison. So if I'm going first, I'm able to get my Haze combo out before he's able to establish a Unison, and that means that he won't have Freezer Charismatic Villain live to counterplay it, which means that when he establishes his unison, I'm going to have a 15k swinger down, and I'm going to be able to play out more 3-drops from my hand with the 1-drop haze, so I'm going to be able to take out his unison a lot easier. As well as you can see, this game I actually drew my unison on turn 1, which is really helpful. So I was able to establish my unison on turn 1, which makes it really hard for him to get through because of my leader's blocker skill, as well as my unison's auto. And then hopefully on turn 2 I can establish some haze combos and be able to threaten his unison come my turn 3. Now, as you can see, the only problem with that is that even after mulliganing away 4 cards from my hand and drawing a bunch off my unison and my leader, I wasn't able to see the 1-drop haze this game before he was able to get his unison down. As you can see, it's turn 2, and I've just gone through all of my draw power this turn, as well as all of my draw power last turn. And I haven't seen a single copy of the 1-drop haze Shenron, which I was a little bit tilted about during the game, I'll be honest. But it is what it is. It's a card game, so variance is going to come into play some games. And this game, it definitely came into play. Not being able to see that 1-drop haze before he drops his unison down is really bad, because as you may remember from last game, as soon as he gets his unison down, he's just able to control all of the battle cards I play down. And that's going to make it almost impossible for me to get through his unison, to clear his board, and to get to his leader. And so it's going to make it really tricky for me to win the game. And another thing that's really bad about this matchup is obviously OG Broly is a hand control deck, and it's also a hand control deck that just doesn't draw very much. So because this is obviously a mill strategy in the Xeno deck, it's going to be really tricky for me to be able to mill him out, so I have to kill him through standard means, which is quite tricky for this Xeno deck to do. It definitely can do it, but it's somewhat reliant on your opponent not knowing so much what the cards in the Xeno deck do, that I think this is a deck that definitely plays off of being underplayed and underrepresented. And it definitely plays off the fact that not many people know what the cards actually do in the deck. So, because my opponent was actually, well, he's part of the Attack on Productions YouTube channel, and because of that, he's had some fairly decent experience playing against the Xeno deck, and so he knows what all of the cards do, and he was able to keep up with what I was doing throughout the game, and that definitely led to his advantage, because my opponent knew what my deck was meant to do, so I wasn't able to play off the fact that people often swing into the Toa unison and just give it free markers or anything like that. So here you can see it's my turn 3, and I'm still trying to dig for my 1-drop haze. I managed to find it, but I end up just tapping 1 for my ultimate whirlwind spin anyway, and I decide not to go for the 1-drop haze into the 3-drop double striker quite yet, because I want to try and play around the Frieza Charismatic if I can. And so I'm doing all of my draw power before I go into my 1-drop haze, because I want to see if I can draw into a way to play around the Frieza Charismatic before I'm forced to dropping it. And so I swing to his unison with my leader, and that puts me at 7 cards in the drop, which is why I played the ultimate whirlwind spin, which will take me to 7 cards in the drop, or 7 Shadow Dragons. And then I end up, that gives me 2 energy available for my haze into the double strike Sin, which if it goes through uncountered, then I'll be able to cleave through his unison because it's only on 2 markers. Sadly, he again has the Frieza Charismatic to back up his unison, which I felt a little bit salty about, because I was really hoping to get that combo out the turn earlier so that I would guaranteed be able to kill his unison. But as I said before, I wasn't able to see my 1-drop haze in time, and of course he had the Frieza Charismatic, so he's going to be able to counterplay my double striker, and that's going to make it really tricky for me to maintain any advantage throughout this game. As you can see, my hand size is even lower than last game was. I think last game I had a fairly decent sized hand, and he only had 2 or 3 cards in hand for most of the game, but during this game I have an even smaller hand compared to last game, just because he's in such a dominant position. He's able to just completely tear apart my hand, and I'm not able to play anything down because of the threat of Frieza Charismatic Villain. And that, excuse me, that is definitely a big weakness of the Xeno deck at the moment. is not only does it get destroyed by hand control, but it gets very much destroyed by green in general because of the threat of Frieza Charismatic Villain. Being able to remove your board at any one time is really, really frustrating, especially for a deck that only generally plays 1 to 2 battle cards in a turn. Frieza Charismatic Villain can definitely shut down your entire turn when you're playing Sin Xeno, because if they just pick the right battle card to kill, then you're not able to play anything else. And that's a big problem for the deck. When you're playing against a deck like Blue, in terms of the other free counterplays that come with the Unison packages, even against decks like Blue, it's a lot easier to be able to stick a board down because you have options like the 3-drop Naturon Shenron, which has Deflect, and so you can do things like playing the 1-drop Haze Shenron and then declaring to use the skill, and then when they play God Sealing Technique Trunks in counter window 1, you can opt to bring out your 3-drop Naturon Shenron, which obviously has Deflect, so it won't get affected by the Trunks, and then they wasted a card and you're still able to make your play. But against green, because you don't have barrier and because Frieza Charismatic Villain doesn't get affected by Deflect, you're not able to put yourself in those same situations, and so you're kind of stuck having to play these cards with the threat of Frieza Charismatic Villain hanging over you the entire game, and knowing that as soon as they draw into it, you're not going to be able to play any cards for a turn. So here I've managed to keep my Ultimate Dragon Tackle in my hand from his discards. He Ribrianned me and did a bunch of stuff with his leader effect and his unison effect. I ended up discarding a super combo because I knew that the Ultimate Dragon Tackle was going to be really, really helpful during the next turn, because it gave me a way to remove his board and to draw an extra card, which is nice. As you can see here, I'm charging these Oceanuses. That's because I'm already at such a small hand. If I pass turn on a 2 or 3 card hand with Oceanus in my hand, it's likely just going to get discarded from my hand before I can use it, because it requires me to have 2 cards in hand to actually use the effect, because it requires itself to be in my hand as well as another card to discard. And so I figured it's not worth keeping them in my hand against that deck, especially when it's OG Broly, so it doesn't actually attack you all that much until it can get down the 6-drop Broly. And so I know that I'm probably not going to have to worry, or I'm not going to be able to afford the Oceanus cost to discard a card. Even though it will replace itself, I'm just at too low a hand size to be able to rely on that. And so I opt to go for the 1-drop Haze into the 3-drop Naturon Shenron. I potentially could have gone into my Double Striker, but I think I only just saw that off of the 3-drop Naturon Shenron auto when it gets played, so I don't think I could have gone for that. But I end up taking his Frieza Charismatic Villain. I was looking through his drop area there, and there was like absolutely nothing that was a decent target in terms of keyword skills. I think the only card that had keyword skills in his drop area was the 8-drop Broly that has Double Strike, or it might have been a 6-drop Broly that has Double Strike. And because the Naturon Shenron can only choose cards that cost 5 or less, they were not viable targets, so I wasn't able to choose either of them, which was a real shame. So here I just decide to leave my blocker open for his next turn in case he has the 6-drop Broly in hand, and I just pass turn. I would have liked to have swung at his Bardock Unison, and I think I've mentioned this before, but this is a really big problem I have with Naturon Shenron, is that even though it's a blocker, unlike the 3-drop Haze Shenron, even if it swings into something, you don't get to restand it at the end of the turn, whereas with the 3-drop Haze Shenron, it warps a card and it will restand at the end of the turn when it swings. So I had to just leave my blocker standing there, and then he taps 4 for his Vegeta Double Strike crit Unison. So that's a really, really big issue for me, because it's going to be sat pretty on 5 markers, and it's going to be very, very tricky for me to actually deal with. So he ends up swinging for my leader for 25k Double Strike crit, and I have no way in hand to actually combo out of this. I end up using the Spirit Boost skill of my leader to try and use the Ultimate Dragon Tackle. I just use that because it means that I'll have Spirit Boost live for his for my next turn, and so I have more options next turn, and I can just get the ultimate Dragon Tackle effect prior to when I would normally have to play it. Here I untap and I top deck the 3-drop Haze Shenron, which is potentially one of the worst top decks in the deck at this point. It's really, really bad. I was kind of hoping to get maybe like the 3-drop Sin Shenron that has double strike, so I could have taken out his Unison, or I could have had maybe the 1-drop Haze to try and search for more stuff, or some extra cards to get some searches going. But no, drawing the 3-drop Haze feels really bad, and I know that I have to charge it here, just so that I have the option to make more plays. I swing to his Unison and I top deck the ultimate Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet, which is again completely useless because he's got nothing on board and he's already got his Unison down, so the counterplay skill is going to be useless. I then +1 my Unison and I top deck another copy of the Unison, which is also pretty useless. I arguably could have kept that second copy of the Unison and tried to just tapped 1 for the Unison and used it as another way to cycle a card. Maybe that could have been a better play, honestly, I'm not sure. But here I decide I'm just going to have to take out his Unison this turn. I have to hope that that last card in his hand isn't a negate. And so what I end up doing is swinging to his Unison with my Toa Unison, and then swinging to his Unison with my Secret Rare, and the last card in his hand is Shocking Death Ball, so he's able to negate the swing on his Unison, so it's alive on 1 marker, and that will mean that he can double strike crit me out of the game, because I'm only on 2 life next turn. Arguably, I could have kept my Secret Rare open for next turn, and just used the blocker skill on it. And tried to block down his Unison, but what I ended up thinking was it was probably more likely that he had some cards in his hand that would help him self-awaken or help him actually kill the card. Sorry, that's the end of the video there. I was thinking if he had, it's probably more likely that he has cards, either cards in his hand to remove the Sin Shenron, because he could have had a self-awakener like Paragus, Sacrifice. He could have had I can't think of any removal cards off the top of my head now. He could have had the 1-drop Golden Freezer that I think it sacks off a field card and it clears the entire opponent's board and becomes 20k double strike. And he could have also had the 3-drop Golden Freezer that comes in, that King Cold plays, that comes in for 3 or 4 energy based on how many extra cards you have in your field and in your drop. So he could have had any of those. He could have also had another double striker like the 6-drop Broly. So I was thinking I just need to take out his Unison, and I thought that was the best play at the time. Potentially the better play could have been to leave the Sin open and just try and sit with a 40k blocker on board and hope that he can't kill me through that. But I genuinely don't think that that was the correct play. Just because, like, even if he'd had any sort of battle cards in his hand, that would have meant that I would have lost the game. But anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. That was the result of my round 2 game against Attack on Productions. I'll have a link to their channel down below as per usual. So as you probably can tell, I am currently 1-1 in the Rising Phoenix Odyssey tournament, and because of this loss it puts me into the losers bracket. But do not fear, I am not out of the tournament yet because it's a double elimination bracket, and we are, so eventually the winner of the losers bracket and the winner of the winners bracket will face off, and that will be the final match of the tournament, I believe. I'm not entirely sure how it works, to be honest, but I know that I'm not out yet, and I've still got some cool decks lined up for you guys, so definitely stay tuned if you're interested in any of those. Subscribe to my channel, I guess, if you want to, like the video and stuff, but also dislike it if you didn't like it, and leave some feedback in the comments below. If you liked the format of how I've been doing this now, with the just doing the entire best of 3 match in one take in one commentary, let me know down below. But also if you preferred when I was doing it in 2 or 3 separate videos like I did with the last match, the Xeno versus Janemba match, let me know about that as well. Check out Attack on Productions and Rising Phoenix Odyssey. I'll have links in the description. Click all the buttons down below, the subscribe, like, comment, all of that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one.